Will Siskey is joining our Thyroid Hair Loss Connection podcast. He's a co-founder and chief marketing officer at Sparrow Health Performance, a whole-body healthcare clinic that focuses on natural, regenerative treatment options. He's also the owner and president of Optio2 Labs, the patented nasal breathing performance enhancement used by top-performing athletes. At 16, Will was diagnosed with alopecia areata that later progressed to alopecia universalis, causing hair loss on his whole body. Today, Will is a handsome guy with a crazy busy life and a full head of hair. Hello, thank you for listening to Thyroid Hair Loss Connection podcast, a science-based, honest, candid conversation about how your thyroid affects your hair. You will learn practical solutions to hair growth, healing your thyroid, and balancing hormones with holistic nutrition approach and the latest treatments. Your hosts, me, Nataliia Sanzo, a registered dietitian, aka Nashville thyroid expert, and Kimberly Vaughn, a board-certified trichologist, hair loss specialist, and coach. To stay up to date on the latest topics, make sure to subscribe to our channel. We also cannot do this without you. Send us a question to the link below and tune in each week for the answers. Now, let's head to the show.
Will, thank you so much for joining us today. We're so excited that we finally get to have you on our episode and on our Thyroid Hair Loss Connection podcast. We know that you have a lot to share with the listeners, so we're going to turn it over to you and let us understand a little bit more about what happened when you were 16 years old and how in the world was your alopecia areata first diagnosed.
Well, thank you, first of all, for having me. It's an honor to be here and be able to share my story. I think that's what, as I'll tell my story, is what makes it worth going through and being where I am today. But so it all started when I was about 16, 15. I remember getting ready. I had during my time when Justin Bieber had the long hair, that was really what I guess every guy wanted to emulate for the ladies. So I was trying to get my hair all straightened out because I have naturally wavy hair. And I remember seeing like a little round spot right there, thinking that's odd, and just kind of combed my hair over it. I don't know why, but I thought it was maybe the crown of my head, just a little different. So it's just whatever. So then about 2 or 3 weeks later, I see it again. I'm like, okay, that's not normal. It looks a little bigger. So I tell my mom about it, and she goes, oh, that happened when you were 2 years old. And, it was after one of my childhood immunizations. I had a really high fever. And then they took me to the doctor. They're like, oh, it'll go away. And then I had several of them like pop up all over the back of my head, apparently, when I was 2. And it explains my childhood mullet. They just grew my hair really long.
Sure.
And
let's clarify just one thing. So you were pointing a moment ago to the area of loss, but for those listeners who can't see you, was the loss in the temple area you were pointing to, like the left side of your head?
Yes, ma'am. So it's about the left towards close to my crown, but not quite all the way back there. And I naturally have a cowlick in that area, so it wasn't abnormal when I was looking at it to see my hair not lie right, or to see parts of my scalp as it, laid open. But so it was kind of unique. But when I was little and it happened at 2 years old, it was all over the back of my head. And there were just a lot of little bitty spots. But it all grew back. Doctors told them not to worry about it. It'll grow back. When I was 16, however, it didn't grow back. I went to the dermatologist, and we were going there. I was a tennis player at the time. And I remember getting there. He say, oh, it's alopecia areata. Are you stressed? And sitting here thinking, well,
you're 16. Are you stressed?
I'm 16, right? I think the worst thing I had going on was whatever girlfriend drama I had at the time, her young heartbreak, maybe. I don't know. So then he asked, well, did your parents get a divorce? And I look at my mom like, is there something I don't know about? And she's, no. Did your house burn down? I'm like, not. It was still standing when we left. So, everything's pretty good. And he's like, no, there's something going on. Okay. So he did steroid injections, and I personally hate needles. So that was, I didn't like that. And we kept doing it. And then it progressed. It stayed in that spot for about a year. And then I had another one on the other side of my head. And then slowly I had another one and another one. And then my whole head, at this time, I'd moved to Florida and had this best doctor in the U.S. for alopecia seeing me. And she was trying everything. I mean, she was really sweet. And I think would kiss my head when I would come in. And she was very loving. But every one of the drugs and trial drugs that I was doing wasn't doing anything. And this was over about a 2-year period to where I just decided, I'll just shave my head, hope for the best. And, life goes on. I have bigger fish to fry. And if this helps, this story helps someone else, whatever, I kind of went that. I thought that was the end of it, that I'll shave my head, we'll be done. That was not the case. I unfortunately lost eyebrows, eyelashes, and everything else along the way. And that was the kind of devastating part for me. I think the most devastating. As a tennis player, eyebrows are pretty important to keep sweat out of your hair, out of your eyes, especially when you're bald. So now not only was I sweating in my eyes as I was playing these competitive tournaments, but now I was sweating my drawn on eyebrows off. And that was difficult. I'd have little kids say something to me about them, and because I'm a guy, I didn't know how to draw them on right. I didn't have someone teach me that. That wasn't something I got in my lessons as how to walk through this, especially when it was a little less common a little over 10 years ago. I mean, it was just not as heard about. So that was probably the hardest part. And I remember the doctor there telling me, we're going to send you to NYU. We'll fly in the best doctor in the world that I know of. Call in a favor. He'll meet you at NYU. We'll get something figured out. So I waited about 8 months for this appointment. I was thinking, okay, this is my golden ticket. Things were getting worse. So my mom, in the meantime, was researching, and it enrolled me in the case study. She was like, will you do this if I enroll you in it? And, I'm kind of backed into a corner. I have nowhere else to go besides this appointment that's 8 months away that hopefully I still get. I said, sure. So we get to New York, and this guy in Gucci shoes comes in, and I just remember this because he was so confidence, maybe not the right word, arrogance, maybe the better word. And he just looked at me and was like, all right, what do you want? I was like, well, I love my hair back. And I was like, if I can settle with the eyebrows, I'll deal with that. If I can just get my eyebrows back. It's like, he just contemplates it like it's a math equation. It's like, I don't. All right. Well, then he puts a book about this thick in front of me and starts flipping through these pages. He says, all right, this FDA trial drug, or this unapproved drug, or this approved drug might give you anywhere from 30 to 60% hair back. And first of all, before he even gets to the side effects, what good's a comb over at 17 now or 18? Right. It's all or nothing, buddy. It's like, I'm not going to go through this just for a comb over. And he says, well, yeah, you'll probably die from lymph node cancer or have lymph node cancer in a couple years anyway if you do this. And as soon as you stop, the hair will just fall back out. I'm like, then why are you suggesting this to a 17 or 18-year-old? Perfectly healthy otherwise, as far as I knew, as far as we understood with alopecia and any autoimmune disease. So in my gut, I was just like, this isn't right. So I was settled with nothing more than a steroid shot that I got in Gadsden, Alabama, and flew back home. But I told him, I said, I just joined a case study that was about changing my diet and my microbiome and my gut. And he immediately started laughing. He was like, if that makes you feel better, then go for it. And I just remember thinking, all right, I'm going to do it. I think that attitude that he didn't even consider it, because I thought it was ridiculous. I was the one that liked my fried chicken and my Southern foods and my conventionally raised foods, to where I didn't want to change my diet. I'm a thriving 18-year-old when convenience is what I live for. But that's, I think he struck a little competitiveness in me at that time where I was, okay, I'm sticking with this. Two, I had no other choice. That was the last thing I had. So long story short, I did change my diet. It took quite a long time. The case study wasn't perfect. I ended up leaving the case study. I was getting some hair growth back, but it was very limited. I basically ate the same meal for every day, twice a day for 2 years. And so,
Right.
And then I got most of my hair back after I expanded from that. And that led to a parasite. I later got a parasite in my gut, re-triggered my autoimmune, led me to tweaking my diet some more, expanding it, learning some new things, doing things like adipose-derived stem cell therapy, and now I'm here. So
with a full head of hair,
yes,
a full two eyebrows, eyelashes, and maybe a hairy body, but at least hair on our arms and our legs, right?
It's definitely getting hairier. And that's one part. I joke with my friends that it's like I'm hitting puberty at 27. I mean, it's like I'm getting chest hair and arm hair. And that's what's crazy is 10 years later, I'm still getting all this hair back that I was getting at puberty. At puberty, I could probably, when it first happened, I was getting close to really being able to grow a man's mustache. And now I'm just now getting all my facial hair back to be where I'm having to shave. And I'll be out in public and realize I have several long hairs right here. But, I need to shave. So it's a good problem to have. And honestly, you saying that is, it kind of makes me emotional in a way because I can take it for granted. But I remember longing for that so badly. And
that's right.
It's really by God's grace that I'm able to do it because they told me it was impossible. They told me I would never see hair again. Even the nice doctor, she told me that. And she was like, even if you do, you're not going to see it right here. I don't know why they said right there, but I have hair there.
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh. I can't imagine thinking about my son who's, younger than 16, but having to go through something that you did and being, as your mom stepped up, right, and just kept pushing forward and was just deliberate in her thinking and the way that she moved through and getting everything in place for you. So the one thing that I think is interesting, and I think listeners might enjoy this and appreciate this, is that, clinical trial studies, right? We haven't talked about those on the show, and it is something that I stay abreast of constantly just because, we do treat so many individuals with areata universalis and totalis. And so one of the things that I like to see is that when those studies come into play, which ones, should even an individual consider. So how did your mom, pick the study?
That's a great question. I'm not sure if I know her exact answer because I think that she was looking at everything. And I think that would be, she's so much well-versed in that maybe there's something I can send over to you with her answer, but I'll do my best to answer for her.
Well, but I'm wondering if it was because that she had listened to so many docs give you such negative feedback that there was nothing medically managed that they knew that could cure areata, right? And so maybe she thought outside of the box and said, well, all of the research, and as we've learned, and we learn every day, that any type of autoimmune condition leads back to what's going on inside our gut, inside our body, inside our bloodstream, right? And so that is one of the reasons that we, Nataliia and I, decided to start this podcast because, Hashimoto's is one form of hair loss. Alopecia areata is another. At the end of the day, both of those start with what's going on internal. Nothing on the top of your head, right? And so it's so important for everyone to understand this.
Right. And I think you hit the nail on the head, because my mom was really wanting to think, well, because usually tan pretty easily. I mean, I was in South Florida 6 hours a day playing tennis at that time as well. So they had me on this drug that when I went out in the sun, I felt like I was burning. My skin would tingle, and it was miserable. I would have to get in the shade immediately. I remember thinking it was so weird. And I remember that being kind of a big moment for my mom, that something's not right. And so she did. I mean, she would call up any doctor that would listen to her, say, hey, tell me what you know about this. Tell me what you know about this. And from all ranges of thought. And that's ultimately where she was like, okay, well, medicine's not providing for him. If anything, it's doing more damage in some ways in other areas. So how can we get closer to the root issue and make him healthy? And in turn, my allergies got better. Before I had hair back, my allergies were resolved. I had chronic childhood allergies at 4 years old. I was on adult strength medication. So it's really remarkable all that she did during that time. I wasn't necessarily thinking or trying to learn at 17, 18. I was just doing what I was told or what someone told me I might get hair back. So it's hard for me to look back in that time and remember the exact form of thinking until I started believing. I saw that first first couple of hairs coming through. I was like, okay, something's here.
Right. That's right. Something's working, right? Because you hadn't seen those few strands of hairs in years.
Right. And especially in the texture, it all came back as peach fuzz. And I think that's the number one thing we hear with alopecia patients is, oh, well, I'll only have peach fuzz. That's a good sign. It's priming you for the real stuff. And it's some people get psyched out by that. And I really think by getting psyched out, they may be preventing themselves from getting that hair. And I know that because I've done it. So it's a delicate process, but the body's pretty darn resilient. If they 10 years later, follicles that they said were dead are resuming and growing hair. It's it's a testament to how the body's designed and made, and that it can really do some amazing things.
Yes.
Will, thank you for sharing your story. Please tell our listeners, what are the top 3 or 5 approaches or changes that you have done in your diet that you saw, like, your success story, the improvements in growth and texture? What do you remember, or even remember as a child or grown up, or now looking back? What are some of the things you have done?
So primarily, I always tell people the number one thing you can do is clean up your diet. I mean, and if I'm not talking fat elimination diets, although I do believe elimination diets are resourceful and useful for solving certain issues, but they shouldn't be a long-term strategy. They're not sustainable or applicable to real life. You can't live in a bubble. So you need to build resiliency after you solve the issue, or build gut resiliency after you heal whatever the underlying issue is for you, whether that's dairy, gluten, etc. So then I recommend people, even if you're not say that eliminating certain things from your diet is way too difficult for you. I think that's an excuse, because I was 17 and ate the same meal for 2 years in a row. If I can do that, you can. But no, I'll be sympathetic. I know it's hard. And just improve the quality of your food. Improve the quality of your meats, improve the quality of your vegetables. Take something like Ion Gut Support, which is made by Dr. Zach Bush, and it gives an extra lining to the gut and helps tighten your tincture. So if you're exposed to chemicals like glyphosate, it's less likely to get in your bloodstream and cause issues. So that's surround yourself around a gut support and build resiliency, I think, is the number one thing. And something that also helped me with that was grass-fed colostrum. So from cows, whether it is in liquid form or in powder form, that stuff is truly amazing. I mean, I think it really helped me a lot. it is, and it's something I go back to pretty regularly. And then from there, think coming in tune with your body and realizing that you may be in fight or flight pretty often, and it may be subtly. So finding ways to mitigate that, whether it be small cold showers or nasal breathing, or learning routines of how to breathe properly and recognizing those triggers. Along with that, there were several other things. LDN, low dose naltrexone, was a great tool for me to help while you're trying to build resiliency. I've mentioned that I don't really like drugs, but this is a small low dose drug that has no side effects at the proper dosage, and it helps block your neuroreceptors to trick yourself to help remodulate, which is really, what's the issue with autoimmunity. So that's really a great layered approach to taking that journey back into building resiliency. And lastly, learning to love yourself and learning to love the difficult parts of life, because if you have pain in your life, that means you love something, and that is a worthy cause, an honorable cause. You never should feel bad that you have had difficult times in your life. I think you should wear them as a badge of honor. Not everyone goes through them. Not everyone chooses to go through them well, and to take the lessons that you can learn. I think those are the deepest things you can get out of life's challenges. And then you never know how you can see the hurt and depth in someone else's heart because you've gone through something. I think that helps you love and make the world a better place. I'm certainly trying my best to do that. And it's not perfect, but it's an effort to do that. And to recognize whether you look in the mirror, you have one more hair, one more less than you had yesterday. Like, the Lord is good. You have a reason for your life. And don't let a doctor or research or this define what your opportunities for tomorrow are, because those things are always changing. The one thing about the body is that it was designed beautifully. It was made incredibly well to heal. We just got to get it there. And that takes time, and that's okay.
Absolutely. Well, those are all powerful approaches. And as you said, our body knows how to heal. We just need to provide the support, right? The nourishment. Right. And you mentioned about high-fat studies or high-fat diet. And the studies actually show that high-fat diet lead to increase in testosterone. And we know high or low testosterone can lead to hair loss. So with you being young, growing male, you probably had high testosterone, and eating high-fat diet was taking it over the top, right? That's a possibility. Mm-hmm. So by changing your diet to go into a lower fat diet, it's probably dropped your testosterone. And of course, improving your gut health, your microbiome made a huge difference, because we know alopecia areata is an autoimmune disease, right? And about 70% of our immune system resides where? In our gut. So improving those bacteria, the quality of their life, of course, improves your immune systems, stops flares up. And on average, we have about 3 to 5 pounds of those bacteria in our gut. So yes, feeding them the right foods makes a huge difference. So this way they can make those vitamins like vitamin K and everything and support our immune system. So yes, those are all great, powerful approaches, and thank you for sharing them with us.
Oh, no problem.
So now I'm going to jump in with another question, and Will, you and I have spoke many times, but, we could keep this going forever. But just to kind of give our listeners a little bit of a wrap up and to give them a thought process of maybe where they go next or how to think next. You mentioned early on in the episode to improve your diet and clean up your diet. You also shared with us that, between the years of 2012 and 2014, you were on a very, very strict diet, ate the same meal twice a day, every day. then over time you transitioned. Tell us about that transition so that the listener can understand a little bit about maybe what they can do, changes they can add, and really for you, sustainability. I mean, you still look amazing, right? Occasionally, I'm sure, there's a flare up here and there because autoimmune diseases stay with us, right? And you can certainly put them at bay and keep them quiet, but how do you keep yours quiet the majority of the time?
Right. So I will speak to an underlying philosophy briefly, and then I'll get into the changes in diet that led me there, and then what sustainable steps they can take as well. So the underlying philosophy began to realize that, okay, avoidance isn't sustainable. Like I said earlier, can't control your perfect scenario. And I did have a spot come up here and there, which I view hair as a luxury. I think the body does too, that it's the first to go, a lot of times as we age and things like that. And the body has its own priority system. I can intervene and try to say, make me grow hair, but it's going to send my cells and say, no, we need your heart to still keep pumping. That's a higher priority than the hair. So a lot of times the body does know best. And when we intervene is when we start throwing its natural order out of whack. So I do believe we can get that equilibrium or the balance sheet per se for cells in the body to a natural level where it can be stayed off and it can kick over that balance beam to keep it off. So that became my goal in resiliency, was getting it to a more place like that. And a doctor that was working with me at the time told me, Will, you really need to try to add dairy and gluten back into your diet in the right forms. And I'm like, God, I've avoided this forever. It's made a huge difference. I've got hair back because I've avoided it. And he goes, but it'll make you more resilient. And I'm just like, okay. So in the past 2 years, I have slowly started adding that back in. I've had sourdough gluten, so ancient sprouted grain made into sourdough. So the gluten is naturally fermented, and you have probiotic benefits and prebiotic benefits of that, but also the gluten content's reduced due to the fermentation. So preparation of food's another topic we can also dive in later, but it's those are things you learn along the way. The biggest, and then with dairy, for me, it was unpasteurized, grass-fed. You have that extra enzyme you need to digest it. It's not being heated into oblivion, and you're actually getting some benefit, not just the taste. So those were the two things when seeking resiliency were the main things. I tried to do it in small amounts. Now my diet's not surrounded around breads and dairy like it was when I did it, when I was first changing my diet in general. It's like we swing to extremes in life. And really, it's full of nuances, and each individual is different. So some people may not be able to tolerate dairy at all. Some people may not be able to tolerate gluten at all. But I would encourage people to, when they are trying to see if those things are bothering them, first of all, improve the quality. So for dairy, that's sprouted, ancient grain if possible. And if sourdough, you can get sourdough, even better. And then monitor your health even 2 weeks after. If you see a change in your health 2 weeks later, see if there's maybe some correlation. It's not perfect, but it's something to monitor. Is your skin changing, or you get acne, or this, that, and the other, or you have some digestive issues a few days later that wouldn't normally be there. It's not exhaustive, because there may be plenty of things in your diet that may need changing, or improving quality. But for dairy, I would say grass-fed. If you can get raw cheese, go raw cheese. And then for meats, grass-fed, no hormones, antibiotics, and regeneratively farmed is even better. So for chicken, this is the hardest one. So organic chicken, people are like, oh, that's better. Well, not necessarily. If it's eating corn and grain that it's not naturally fed, the omega-6s are going to get distorted. And then it's almost toxic for you. So really, chickens are the hardest thing to find naturally, where it's not, they actually have a diet that's natural to them, where they're eating insects and so forth. Some supplementation's fine. There's plenty of farms like that. I know a few in Alabama that are that way, and they ship. Heritage Hills Farm is one of them. And I know BDA Farm in Alabama as well is another great farm. And then, of course, if everyone knows of White Oak Pastures, I think you in Georgia, they've hit it pretty big recently with being on Joe Rogan's podcast. So those are 3 good farms, especially local to our Tennessee and Alabama area. Mm-hmm. I'm sure there are more, and then the more wild you can eat, the better. I mean, I think that's a natural, just baseline rule of thumb that you can take. So wild blueberries, they're going to have higher nutrients because they fought for their survival. They're natural wild animals are going to eat more natural of a diet just because humans haven't intervened with their systems either. And it's just a modern issue, but it's definitely fixable. It's just we got to get back, not lose the benefits of modernity without losing the wisdom that we had in ancient times of preparation and the farms and appreciation for the art of it. I think we've gone completely intellect and lose the art and heart behind some things. We need our heart and mind together. Our intellect's not going to save us, but we definitely not thinking at all is not going to help us either.
Yeah, it's a full body approach for sure. One thing does not fix the problem.
Right.
Yes.
So, and then for the vegetables, I would say organic and limit glyphosate if you can. And farmers markets will likely be better than if you're going to go non-organic than going to Whole Foods or something like that. Mm-hmm. Which Misfits Market is a great place to get organic vegetables affordably. It's just the coloring of them sometimes makes me wonder if their nutrients are lower. They're not as quite as ones that you would maybe grow at home, and they're vibrant. But anyway, I digress.
No. Well, no, it's funny. That is one of the things that's tough right now because groceries of all types have gone up and increased in price. And so when we talk to new clients about their diet, that's one of the first things they say is, how can I afford this? Because everything is twice as expensive. But I think you bring up a good point. If there are local farms, and I'm not sure if they have or offer co-ops, and sometimes those are a lot less expensive. And also, depending upon the co-op boxes that you can get, that you have a multitude of differing fruits and vegetables that are ripe for that time and that season, they're just amazing to eat because, they couldn't have more nutrients, right?
Exactly. And it really becomes an art, I think, in a skill that you should love and enjoy in the process of learning to care for yourself, but the food is so nourishing to you, but also to your family. It's a beautiful thing to have in your life to be able to provide not only food that tastes good, but is nutritious and beneficial to you and your family. And supporting local farms is so important. If we don't have them, we don't eat. And we benefit from being able to go to the market pretty easily, but without them, we don't have it. So it's a neat thing.
Well, and you're preaching to the choir because I am from a farming family. And so we have all different types of cattle and we used to raise hogs as well. So yeah, I'm all there. Amen to that.
Right.
Well, Will, I think our time is up and we have to say goodbye to our listeners. But before, I want to thank you for joining us, our podcast, for sharing your inspiring story. It's incredible. Your hair looks great. You're a handsome young man, and just I know your hair health will just continue to improve the texture and the growth. So thank you for sharing those valuable approaches and giving our listeners actionable steps that they can take today to start improving their hair shed. And we will include your contact information in the episode notes below. Thank you all.